Welcome to Get Your House in Order. I'm Elke Rubach, and today's podcast is about a conversation too many people avoid: money, structure, and responsibility. Because your freedom and legacy depend on it. Today, my guest is Saijal Patel, and she's the founder of Saij Elle and host of Strictly Money. She's built her career translating financial jargon into plain English and calling out noise that keeps so many Canadians stuck. We've met on LinkedIn. Our ideas match a lot, and we're spreading the same message. We're talking today about ownership, why relying on government's rescue isn't a plan, how reckless spending, not just governmental, but personal spending, is eroding stability, adding noise, making it very fragile for everyone, and what each of us can do just to take back control. If you've been waiting for Ottawa to fix your finances or some special miracle to get you started, this episode is for you.
Saijal, thank you for being here. So let's dive in right now. Let's start with the big picture. What's the biggest myth that Canadians still believe about money, and what's that mindset costing us?
The biggest myth, that it's difficult to learn, I think, how to manage money. I don't think it's difficult. You and I have been in it, but it does require some time and some investment and knowledge. And I would say that's probably the biggest, and it's the reason why so many people are just not taking it seriously. I mean, I don't know about you, Elke, but I bang my head against the wall because I started this, financial education consultancy business 8 years ago. And I'm still shocked at how so many people, government, corporations are still not taking it seriously at a time where it's so much more harder to get ahead financially.
Yeah. And what I find that it's not hard. It's just you haven't done it before. Like if you ask me to open a brain right now and do some, can I learn it? Probably. Is that something I want to do? No. But if you haven't done it, it doesn't mean you can't learn it. You just have to get rid of arrogance and that protective arrogance of like, oh, I'll get to that later, or nothing's going to happen to me, or I'm fine and I don't need this, or my husband has it. Oh, you need to know, you need to understand, and you need to set the example for your kids, and everybody needs to keep it simple. Financial planning, financial discipline doesn't have to be rocket science. It just needs to work for the family and stop relying on what the neighbor says or what you think. Like, I don't know. I pull my hair because you and I met online because of that. We're trying to tell people, take it seriously. It's now.
Yeah.
In the middle of an election, in the middle of a very tricky time for Canada. But inflation, all these headlines, they're scary, they're concerning, they're real. But unless you take ownership of your own financial situation, you are spinning your wheels and you're setting yourself up for such a disaster.
You are. And I feel like people are taking a black and white approach, right? Either I need to know everything and it's overwhelming, or you know what, I'm just going to dump it on an advisor's lap or somebody else's or my partner's, and they can deal with it. But here's the interesting thing. I have never met anyone, Elke, anyone who doesn't care about money. Everybody cares about money. And if they say they don't, they're lying. Right. And so it's like, for something that you care so much about. I mean, look, you see people driving halfway across the town to save like 3 cents a liter on gas. That tells me you care about money. And yet you don't look at the big picture. Like, okay, you save maybe $5 on your gas tank, but you're about to lose 100,000 or 200,000 just because you're not investing. Your estate plan isn't set up. Like all these things, and it's just to me, it's just mind-boggling.
And I tell people, it doesn't matter how affluent you are. There's always a level. There's something that's missing in your plan, or a plan, could be the part that's missing. There's always something missing that can crumble absolutely everything. Whether you have $5, whether you have $5 million, or whatever the number is, doesn't matter. And you need to really sit down, give yourself the time, and figure out. Because the other thing too, people don't talk about money. And I'm trying to normalize the money conversation because like we don't talk about money. That's not lie. We don't talk about money. But okay, fine, you don't talk about money, but then you are just making a mess. You're working for why are you working? What's the meaning you want to give to your wealth? What's the example you want to set for your children? Where do you want to go with all this? Are you tax efficient? Do you understand what you're invested in? Do you know how to untangle the things you have? Or as you say, people drive miles to save $5, but do you understand the concept of value of time? Is your hour worth $5, or could you be doing something else?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I find it mind-boggling. And then and you and I have been talking about this too. We've watched governments, and it doesn't matter which party. They promise relief, and they're running record deficits. So why do you think so many Canadians still expect policy to fix their personal finances? And what's the danger in that?
Again, I think they're just outsourcing the problem, right? They don't want to take responsibility. I have a saying, Elke, everyone wants their rights. They want the right to vote. They want whatever the right is. Very few people actually want to take the responsibility. And not when things go right. It's when things go wrong. And the two go hand in hand, right? So if you want the right to vote, learn how money works. You gotta invest in understanding policies and the implication of policies. We don't do that. I mean, and this isn't a Canada phenomenon, right? We see this everywhere. The problem is the world has changed so much that we can no longer afford to allow irresponsible spending. I joke. I mean, we are, trying to teach individuals how to be fiscally responsible. Governments are not fiscally responsible. And I can bet you any money, 95% of those in government are financially illiterate, right? So how do they manage your money well? We see it all the time. Everyone complains. Well, they're blowing money here. I go, yeah, because you know what? They don't have to. They don't have to be responsible, because all they have to do is like, oops, okay, you know what? I'm going to tax you more. And it might not be personal income tax. They sneak it in, right? It's property tax and GST and HST and all of those things. That's how they sneak, carbon tax. They sneak it in. But you can't tax your way to wealth. You can't. The more you take from people, the less they're going to be consumers, the less they're going to save. They're certainly not saving for retirement. If you don't give them affordable homes, then all their wealth, if they can get into the housing property, is going to just be able to keep the lights on and have a place to stay. What do you think happens in about 10, 20 years when you got, I don't know, 10, 15 million Canadians who are about to run out of money and they haven't saved for retirement? The government's not thinking long term. And I always say it's because they don't have to. Someone else is going to be left holding the bag. But we have to think longer term. And the only way we can do that is if individuals understand how money works and start holding people accountable.
Yeah. And I find it incredible. Like when we do plans for people, we always say, let's be super conservative, because right now it might not look as pretty and attractive and sexy. But what I really don't want is for you to have to get a job at the age of 92, right? Because you ran out of money, or
You're not going to be able to get a job at 92.
Right? Maybe a greeter sitting on, like, it's not the way to end your life, I guess.
Yeah.
And I mean, I make suggestions and they make decisions, right? I can't really pull them. I say I'm an advisor, not a convincer. At the end of the day, they're going to live the consequences of their decisions, whether they act or don't act, they plan, don't plan, if they listen. Like we're constantly sending out this message of like, be responsible. And, Canada's at a very difficult point. and you need to control your house, and you need to get your house in order and get your estate plan and your tax plan and your asset management and diversification, all these things that go into a plan. You're not going to do it in one day, that's for sure, but you need to get started.
For sure you do. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, if I don't have enough money, I'll just delay retirement, or I'll work. Thing is, you don't know if you'll be able to work. You don't know. You don't know what your health condition is going to be like. Elke, you don't know what our government policies could be like in 10, 20 years. If there's enough pressure from the younger generation who are saying, I can't find a job because the 80-year-olds are sticking around, they can enact policies like that to say, we're forcing retirement. You don't know. We live in a democracy, right? And they're going to pander to voters, and the voters have the voice. You saw that happen in other countries where they're like mandating retirement. Okay, so now what do? You got a plan. It's so different. I often compare financial health to physical health. And I say the difference is, like, physical health, there's a vanity aspect of it. It's not hard really to lose, say, 5 pounds, right? You can go out, you can do these things. You might not be successful in keeping it off, but it's much easier. And plus, media talks about this all the time. You can't, and by the way, and there's medication. So if you fall sick, you might have the solutions, right? The doctors will fix you up and give you the pills that you need. Money doesn't work like that. Like, you run out, you can't just snap your fingers and go, oh, gee, I need $500,000. Not going to happen.
And that's the message we're trying to give the government. Like, if politicians use the money as if it were their own money, and I say that in quotations, we would be better off, because clearly they're not being responsible. But at least if it was their money they're talking about, I think there would be a bit more accountability. Like, if they're going to invest in infrastructure or in things that there's something to show for where they're investing, fair. Same thing with people. Like, if you want to use your money to renovate your house because you're going to sell it or keep it up or so on, there's something to be said for that. Is it the right time? Can you afford it? What are the implications of doing that now over delaying it? So that's what a plan will tell you. But the concept of retirement, as you say, is a complicated one, because it used to be very easy. You retire at 65, you die at 70, we're good, right? Yeah. But now you have to plan for a third of your life. And how are you going to live? Can the medical system sustain you? Everybody is counting on their RSPs and medical system being free. It doesn't work. That is going to crack at some point, if not very soon.
Yeah. And then you can't magically go back to work and come up with money. I did a keynote in Lake Louise, and I was talking to a group of Manulife advisors, and actually it talked a lot about this. I said, life has changed, right? When you were in your 80s, an average house cost, what was it? I think $78,000 in 85. Your average household income after tax was $28,000. So it costs 3 times your average income, household income after tax, to buy a home. It is now 7 times, right? We don't have DB plans. Well, we do, but the defined benefit plans has dropped significantly. So now we're putting all that pressure on an individual to figure out how to create a diversified portfolio, even if they have a DC plan, if they're lucky enough. How many people, Elke, can do that? Very, very few know how to do that. Then you've got longevity, like you said, right? You're not dying 5 years after retirement. You're dying 30, 40 years later. How do you manage all of that? You can't. So I don't blame people. I see the struggles like you do every day. I know it's hard. I know why money is the number one cause of stress for people. But my message and your message is, you got to do something about it. If you learn financial skills, which, in the 80s, you didn't really have to know a lot of financial education, because all you had to know is how to make money. Everything else was somewhat taken care of. that game has changed completely now, because you actually have to learn the skills. You have to learn how to accumulate your wealth, because no one's doing it for you. You got to figure out how you're going to decumulate wealth, in a 20, 30, 40-year retirement. You got to navigate a very complicated and economic and political system, which is, filled with uncertainty. You got to make sure you're not getting scammed along the way, right? And you're dealing with an environment and all the social media messages out there that's saying you don't have to work hard. Patience isn't rewarded anymore. Everything is like a quick fix. Well, money doesn't work like that.
I just see when people say, if you invest in this and then your crypto, and if you know what you're talking about, go for it, but make sure you're not risking your entire house. And lazy, easy, fast money doesn't exist anymore. And patient capital is the key, and discipline, and literally common sense. You and I talk about literacy and behavior every day, all day long. But we agree that even if you have the knowledge, if people don't act on it and sit down and are really truly owners of their future and destiny, a knowledge without action is useless.
Yeah. Yeah. This is why when I started the business, I see all this content out there and people are just addicted to scrolling this content. Oh, look at me. I've learned this. What are you doing about it?
Yeah.
You have to do something about it. Scrolling Instagram all day long is not going to help you, which is why I actually developed a course. It was during COVID. I built a holistic course, 14 lessons. And as you know, Elke, I'm very focused on women. So this is a program for women, because I also think women need to understand the systemic challenges that they face, which is wage gap, child caring duties, longevity. They're going to live longer than men on average. So there's a lot of things that women have to think about. But I built this program because I said, this is not just about content. This is about you getting some level of a blueprint done, right? It doesn't replace good advice, but you might be in a position where you can't afford a financial advisor. But I need you to understand that it's not just about saving. Saving's not going to get you where you need to be. It's not even only about investing, unless you get really, really lucky. But there's more to it. There's tax planning. There's estate planning. There's a lot of things that actually fit in. So I cover the gamut, but still the message is you got to invest in this, and you got to do something about it. And you actually have to engage with the industry.
And you have to take
an option, right?
At the end, if they choose not to, I don't know what, a little bit of what I tell my kids. I'm like, I've seen this happen. I know that, when your parents tell you you're going to fall, you're going to fail, right?
Yeah.
So I share knowledge. I really invite, we're both very passionate about women and learning and removing the starting line. This is a dumb question. That drives me crazy. But I'm not here to judge. I'm here to help you enable, facilitate the path to financial literacy, to financial well-being, that people are responsible, that the children don't have to go through unnecessary stress if they don't have to. Just because you have kids doesn't mean you should have kids if you can't be responsible, and responsible includes financially. So something that I would love to see as policy change is, how if you buy a car, you cannot leave the dealership unless you have insurance. I think that you should not be allowed to leave the hospital unless you have some kind of life insurance policy to cover your children. It doesn't have to be $10 million, but something. It drives me it drives me crazy. The kids did not ask for that stress. Parents have accidents, things happen, and then you have all these GoFundMe's because parents didn't have insurance in place. And no, nobody likes to buy insurance, but everybody loves insurance when they need it, right?
Yeah. Well, because the thinking is insurance is a scam. Now, you see some bad cases, but overall, unless you're committing fraud, it's not a scam. I worked at Manulife, like I've worked at an insurance company. I have friends who are underwriters, so I understand how it works. But yeah, I agree with you. And they were just like, well, it's an added expense. I'm like, but you spend money all the time. Like if I were to force you, like you have to have car insurance, you have to have house insurance. This is something similar. And it could be something. Like we're not saying, you got to spend tons and tons of money, but most people are not insured or underinsured. So how do we fix that? I mean, even if you're working for a company and they offer some level of insurance as part of the benefit, most people think that's enough. And it's usually not enough. I mean, almost 9 times out of 10, it's not enough. And you do term, like no one's saying that you have to hang on to insurance. And once you don't have dependents, let your policy lapse or just buy a policy that makes sense according to that. And again, I teach this in my program, right? And we talk about disability insurance and critical insurance and the differences and when one makes sense versus the other. They're not the same thing. What's really interesting, Elke, when I work with women, the number one comment I get is that investing is risky. I said, okay, so what are you afraid of? And they're like, we're afraid we're going to lose all our money in the stock market. I said, but you're not. And if you do, that means everyone has around the world. And then we got much bigger problems. But I tell them a couple of things. I said, one, it is in every government's interest to make sure the stock market does well. So when you do understand that, even if it dips, it's going to come back up, right? So you just got to play the longer game. Like, you need a 3-4 year time horizon at minimum. But that's not actually where you're going to lose your money. You're going to lose your money when life happens, and it's going to happen. Either you're going to get sick, a partner's going to die, you're going to lose a job, something's going to happen, right? Or your house is on fire or something. That's where you're going to lose your money because it's going to wipe out a chunk of your money if you're not set up properly. And then you have that impact, right? Across the board, whether it's like you're going to have to pull money out of your RSPs or you're going to go into debt or whatever it is, that's what's going to set you back. And it's eye-opening. Like they never think about that. And then it's like, wow, I didn't know that. I go, that's when it's going to happen. And it happens to all of us. You can't predict that. What is it? 1 in 3 are going to have a disability or critical.
Yeah. I know. And people think it's like stroke, heart attack, or cancer. Like, how about burnout? How about depression?
Stress is so up there.
It's every day of the week, everywhere it's happening, and people just burn out and they cannot function. And you go to your doctor, and your doctor says, "Yeah, you are officially unable to work right now." And they're either going to fire you if you don't declare the because you're now not performing, or you're not going to have an income. And how are you going to handle a massive mental situation without money?
Yeah.
And how do you bring that piece of news to your family?
And a one income household doesn't cut it anymore. Again, like the 80s, right? It was fine then. For most people, it doesn't work.
And one of my favorite too is when people say, when you do a plan for people, you need to understand all their sources of income and like, how much do you make? And people try to say less, or they're like, well, around about, and they don't want to tell you. I'm like, I don't care how much you make. I need to understand how you spend it, and what's important to you, and what's your health, and what's your family situation, and how many kids do you have? Because if something happens to you, and it's not that you're panic selling, you just need to look at all scenarios, the good ones and the bad ones. And I also say I'm not the good news fairy. If there's a problem, let's talk about it now while we can.
I love that line. I'm not a good news fairy. Yeah. I say that too. I say that to women. I said, I'm not here to make you feel good about yourself. Like obviously I'm there to encourage you. I won't enable bad behavior. And it's And I say that because I care too much about your financial security.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to tell you what you may not want to hear. Like, I'm not going to say, oh, yeah, if you just put away $5 in investing, that's
Skip
beans.
your Starbucks.
Yeah,
Starbucks.
You're not. But people say it because it's like, well, I get it's something, but it's not enough. That's like telling a cancer patient, well, it's whatever. It's okay if you eat and drink maybe cut back to like 10 drinks a week instead of like 20. Well, no, I'd be like, you got to cut it all out.
Like, you are going to die if you don't do this. I don't know how to tell you otherwise. Yeah. And now let's go to another topic that you and I are constantly going at. A massive wealth transfer is coming in Canada.
Yeah.
And
$1 trillion, right? Changing hands.
yeah, but poor literacy will burn that wealth. And it's a tragedy because the other thing that's happening with the current tax situation is money is following where it's welcome, right? When taxes are high, money leaves. But the wealth transfer is coming to Canada and people are not prepared. So in your world, what do you think people, family, individuals, human beings should be doing to protect it now?
So many things. And you and I have talked about this. First of all, you got to start having conversations. It's one thing to have a will in place, which, by the way, only 48% of Canadians have a will in place.
And is it updated?
And then 30% actually have an estate plan because they don't know the difference between a will and an estate plan. The two are not the same. A will is part of an estate plan, but it doesn't make up for it. And they have no idea whether they can execute on it. It's one thing to write something in paper. It's another thing to make sure you have the right executor in place, whether you actually have your setup financially to be able to execute on it, which sometimes takes insurance, right? Sometimes you need that. But as you and I talk about, it takes conversations.
Yeah.
Okay, I saw, and I forgot because I did this presentation, but I think something like 58% of people have not had the conversation. Could even be higher. They have not even had the conversation with their heirs about what their wishes are. And 12% don't ever intend to. Which is the problem that you and I that you mentioned earlier. We don't talk about money. But I said, this is all happening at a time when making money is hard. And I said, if you don't feel like you can climb the ladder to wealth, you're going to jump on a trampoline, which is why you see the cryptos and everything else happening, right? And you can bet that this generation, they might not be saying it, although some are actually very vocal. If you look at, Facebook chats and stuff like that, they are expecting that inheritance.
Yeah.
They're fully expecting because they know that's the only way they're going to be able to jump a little bit ahead. So when they don't get it, when they don't get what they think they deserve, if, Sister Sally gets more than what you thought you should get, you can imagine the beep show that's going to happen. And it is coming. Like I talked about this with the advisors. So you watch how this plays out in the next 4, 5, 6 years. You're going to see more legal battles. You're going to see frozen assets. These heirs are not going to want anything to do with their parents' advisor because they're going to be so pissed off. That's what's at stake. And then the parents, I'm like, what do you do? You're going to lose all this money to legal fees, and then the courts are going to get involved. And if you don't actually have anything set up, the government's going to take more. Why would you do that?
Did you see the article that came out last week, or a week or 2 weeks ago, about a family that sold a house and then now the heirs just got $50,000 and CRA is mean? I'm sorry, CRA is not mean. The parents did not plan. Period. I don't know how to tell them this in bolder words. It's if you don't plan, if you don't talk, if you're shy to talk to your kids about money, that's what's going to happen. Right now, I have a situation where the one of the parents didn't talk about final wishes, and we don't know if we wanted to bury or incinerate or cremate the person. Things like that. The kids are expecting an inheritance because they're expecting the inheritance. Well, the parents are living a lot longer than they thought, and their burn rate is a lot higher than they thought. So they might not get anything. Or people who are just assuming that they're going to get X million dollars, and when the parents realize that they've never talked to their kids and there's maybe $150,000 left, and everybody else is banking on a multi-massive inheritance, those problems are real, and they are every single day.
Every day. And, I feel very fortunate that I can, I talk about money all the time, and I talk about it with strangers, especially when they ask me what I do. And people are very open. They'll tell me, what's going on in their family dynamics. And I always stress to them, like, you get these things in order, but it's not enough to have it in order. You got to have the conversation with the family and talk about, why you're doing what you're doing. You may end up saying, maybe I need to change the will. Because even then, what a parent sometimes think is equal is not equal, right? And you see this all the time. You're like, yeah, but I have 2 kids. One is not well off. The other one, I don't know, is like married very well. So I'm going to give the other one more money. Well, you better have that conversation with the children, because the children may think, well, no, like, we're equal. It doesn't matter who I marry. We should get half. Or I took care of the parents when they were sick. So maybe I deserve more. Like, you have to have those conversations, and don't assume that your kids have the same values as you, or like what I like to say, money personalities. Everyone is different. Yeah.
And I know, like, you and I can pull our hair out every day and try to, spread the message. And so there will be people that will never listen, period. The end. Like, I know that. I've come to terms with that. But generally speaking, we work with people who are smart, who are busy, who have a bunch of complexities that life has, started compounding for them. And then they're overwhelmed. If we want to give the listeners, say, a first 7 days checklist to get out of that cloud of noise and overwhelm, what should they actually do this week? Starting, today's Friday, let's go Monday. What do they need to do to get started and getting their house in order?
Do you mean from a wealth transfer perspective? I think it's really sitting down with, if you have a spouse or whoever it is, and just sitting down and going, what is it that we want? What kind of legacy do we want? And what do we have? Go through your net worth. What do we have? And what do we want to do? The next step would literally be, you got to sit down with a financial advisor. Like, and I don't say that lightly. You can't really execute on anything if you don't know, like you said, what your burn rate's going to be, what the tax consequences are. Everyone I know, well, not everyone, but most people I know, they skip and they go, okay, now that I know, I'm going to go get a will done. The lawyer is not a financial planner. The lawyer is just going to go, okay, yeah, who do you want the executor to be, or whatever, right? And they'll just do that. But you actually need your numbers to be able to know whether you can do what you want in the will. Backing up to, you gotta pick an executor, and it can't be just anyone. You have to think, does this executor, are they organized? Are they going to be able to understand the dynamics? Do they understand who we are and what our wishes are? And are they going to be able to convey that to the heirs? There's a lot more to being an executor. I would say consider paying them, especially if your situation is complicated. They may, it's very time consuming.
It can be a full-time job. Oh, yeah.
And what they don't realize is the executor can say, you know what? I don't want to do this. And they'll just walk away. They don't have to do it just because you've named them. And make sure you tell them who they are. I know many cases where they don't even tell the executor that they're the executor.
And they're not ready, and they're personally liable too. So that's another one.
Yeah. So, if it gets complicated, outsource it. There's banks or whoever, they do this for a living. So yeah, I would say start there.
And yes, pay. But in fairness, I also see the confusion that happens because the concept of a financial advisor, is it an asset manager? Is it a financial planner? Is it an insurance person? People get confused. I think it's
most of.
And there was some movement in the industry saying who can call himself what or so on. But I still think that for the general public, it's confusing. I think if I had to simplify it in layman's terms, I would say somebody who can help you map out your finances according to your situation, what you want to do with your money going forward.
Yeah.
Ideally, independent, ideally someone who can just lay it out for you, and then you decide how to implement it. You can implement with the advisor, or you can do whatever you want, but at least be clear. And yes, that costs money because a proper financial planner is going to spend X number of hours, and they're not few. There are a lot of hours that go into a proper financial plan.
I've done it. You've done it. Yeah.
It's a lot of work. It's to do it right. And there has to be communication, and if the person is not giving you all the information, well, the plan's going to be limited, right? So it has to be open, it has to be professional, it has to be adult to adult conversation. All the voices have to be in the room. But that's the kind of person you want to go to, not someone who's going to say, "Give me your assets and then I'll invest them for you." That's short-sighted. That's just looking at rate of return.
Like I said, that doesn't. So, like you, a lot of women in my program would say, "Oh, I met with my financial advisor at the bank," and I said, "The bank?" And they're like, "Yeah, my bank branch," and they go, "They're not advisors."
Yes,
they don't look at your life holistically and make sure that you're tax efficient and you can reach your goals and you're protected. That's not what they do. They play a role. I'm not going to diss anyone who does that, right? They play a role, but you just have to understand that it's one piece of the entire financial planning wheel.
And it's not a set and forget. This has to be an ongoing conversation, and reach out. And even when you think there isn't a change, reach out, make it both ways, and make sure that you keep everyone up to speed, because one little change can really flip everything backwards, or not necessarily in a negative way, but really have impact on your future, your livelihood, your returns, your whatever, right?
Oh, when someone passes away, those big life events, right? You have another child who was not part of the will. Your children get married, you get divorced, you get a second marriage, you're in a second marriage or a second relationship. All of that stuff matters.
Oh, and then let's not even go into prenups, co-habs, sandwich generation, kids with disabilities and financial dependencies, addictions. Like we could cover 6 days worth of a podcast here. All the things.
Yeah.
So Sanjay, just to close, let's do a quick lightning round.
Okay.
One financial habit that you refuse to compromise on.
Pay yourself first.
Okay. Your favorite one-line money truth.
No one's going to care more about your money than you.
And a book or tool you actually use with clients.
Ooh. I do recommend books, and there's a couple. Morgan Housel's Psychology of Money. I think that's a good book. Yeah, it's a great book. Willing Wisdom, Tom Dean's, great book. He really hits on the emotional part around estate planning. And another one that's not financially related, but it's a book that I absolutely love. It's called Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. And it talks about why change is hard and how do you convince people to change. It's a weekend read. I recommend it to actually many CEOs. It's stuff that some of the principles I've actually incorporated into my program. But yeah, that was one I'd say you have to read that one.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we could talk for hours, and I'm sure we'll do this again, and we'll touch another topic. And once the budget is out, we'll figure out the next conversation.
Yeah. But thank you so much for your time. And I have to say, like, we've connected on LinkedIn, and I feel like we're just so aligned in so many of our views. When I see your posts, I'm like, oh, finally someone who really gets what I'm doing and gets and thinks the way I do. So, so it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. Well, they say that that's how you start a movement, right? First, you're the one that sounds crazy, and then another crazy joins you, and then everybody dances with you. I don't know if you've seen that.
I have. I've seen that video, and it's not the second person; it's the third person.
To all our listeners, here's the truth. Saijal and I want to leave with you. The government cannot budget their way into your financial freedom. Only you can. Stop waiting for the next headline, the next promise, the next fix. It's not coming. Take one step this week that strengthens your financial foundation. Share this episode with someone who keeps saying later. And I'm Elke Rubach. This is Get Your House in Order. Saijal, thank you so much. And until the next time.